Welcome to another edition of the HBD Chat. I'm your host, James Hansen. Today, Dr. Harrison is joined by Dr. Marc Kramer and Eliana Ardila from Miami, Florida, who make up the Birding by Bus team. Dr. Harrison?
Thank you, James. Welcome, Marc and Eliana.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, James.
Thank you for having us.
Our longtime friends, family friends, and business friends for a long time. It's nice to be able to work closer with you guys. Maybe you could give us just a brief introduction of how you changed your professional approach to cut the stress out of your life a little bit, Marc. We know that stress is one of the major things that's killing veterinarians right now for various causes.
Sure.
You guys look pretty darn happy to me. So share some of those secrets with us.
Yeah, so I've been a veterinarian now for 21 years, and I started out in bird and exotic practice. I worked, I did an internship after graduating from veterinary school, and then came down here to Miami and started working with Dr. Don Harris at Avian and Exotic Animal Medical Center. And I worked with him for about 8 or 9 years. And, I worked as the associate veterinarian. It was a 2-doctor practice, and it was busy. I was on call 2 out of 3 weekends. Actually, I was on call 5 days a week and worked 2 out of 3 weekends, and, worked a lot. I definitely gained a lot of valuable experience, and it was a great experience. But, there's something to be said about veterinarians burning out and just working too hard. So I felt like I needed a little bit more balance in my life. I also wanted a bit of a break from veterinary practice. And so Eliana and I met in 2006, and by 2008, we had this grand idea of doing a big bucket list trip, taking off an extended period of time and going to explore the world, do something that we always wanted to do. I didn't want to wait until I was retired to do hiking mountains and seeing birds in remote places and that sort of thing. So we said, you know what, let's do this now while we're still young and able. So it was 2008, and I left the veterinary practice, and we decided to take a year off from reality. And we weren't sure exactly where we were going to go at first. We talked about South America. We talked about maybe even Africa. But then I got a message, Greg, from your wife, Linda, who sent me an article about another couple from the United States that took their 70s Volkswagen bus, these old hippie vans that have been around forever, and they just seem to keep on going and going. They took that bus and they drove it from California to the tip of South America. Then they shipped their bus over the Atlantic Ocean from Brazil to Africa. They traveled around Africa for a year, then shipped the bus back to New York and traveled around the United States for the rest of that trip. And they spent 2 years on the road. And for me, that was, I think for both of us, that was very, very inspiring and sort of led to our next idea of acquiring our own Volkswagen bus and taking some time off and, exploring the roads of North America. We eventually settled on traveling from Florida to Alaska and back in that bus, and just kind of doing something that we always dreamed about doing and getting away from the stresses of work for a while. So I think that in essence was sort of the beginning of our birding by bus endeavor, although birding by bus didn't really get coined until 2018. Maybe Eliana can talk a little bit about how that evolved.
Well, in 2008, when we did the first road trip, there wasn't really social media like it is now. Like now everybody uses social media for so many things. Back then, what we did is we had a blog, and we documented every single day of the trip on that blog. And we had a following back then. I remember even getting care packages and people sending fan mail and things. It was really neat. But yeah, we originally had talked about doing South America. I'm Colombian, and I'm like, oh, South America will be great in the bus. But we were completely new to this Volkswagen thing. We knew that we will have breakdowns, and we're like, well, let's test it out in North America first and try the United States and Canada. So we did that, and yeah, in the United States, it's such a beautiful country. so many times we think of like going to see other continents and seeing other places when we have so many amazing things here in the United States that we need to go see. And we really focus on nature and the national parks and birding and just getting out there and like refueling. So that was a magical thing for us. And the bus, just so you know, her name is Valentina. We bought her on Valentine's Day. So anybody that has a Volkswagen bus, they give them a name, and ours is Valentina. So from now on, if you hear her say Valentina, that's the reason, because she has a name.
Going back to your original question of, sort of not falling into that trap of stress in veterinary medicine. And, we know that the veterinary profession has a real high rate of depression and even suicide. I think that first year that we took off in 2008 was just a real refreshing life experience. And then after that year on the road, which, I think, some people might say, okay, you didn't work for a year, what did you spend? How did you financially manage that? Well, we traveled very frugally around the country. We traveled in this Volkswagen bus, and we mostly did things that, cost a minimal amount of money. We visited national parks and we were bird watching, and we were doing this other hobby at the time called geocaching, which is like a scavenger hunt game that you play with a GPS device. But we actually spent like that whole year, I think we spent like what, $15,000 or
$13,800. I kept a spreadsheet.
We were amazingly frugal. She kept track of like every postcard,
anything we bought,
every meal, and
I kept us on track.
Every drop of gas.
One thing about the bus is that we slept in there. We cooked in there. It has like a small little kitchen. So we were able to do everything in there. And so we were spending money. I think the biggest expense was gas at that point, especially because in 2008, gas was really expensive. But other than that, it's amazing how frugally you can travel. Like you really can get out there and see the world without having to spend that much money. So it's very doable. If anybody wants to go out there, follow those dreams.
And it was a really refreshing life experience. And then when we came back from that trip, I sort of changed paths a little bit. And instead of being immersed right back into practice and, working for somebody else, I decided to, sort of freelance and become a locum veterinarian. So I started doing some shelter medicine, and I started this sort of unique niche of doing bird and exotic medicine relief work, which there are very, very few veterinarians that do that. And that brought me to like 7 different states at this point, where I wound up becoming licensed as a veterinarian. I got licensed I'm licensed in New York, Florida, Oklahoma, Indiana, Washington, Utah, and my latest one is Alaska. Because with this kind of unique niche of doing relief or locum work as an avian exotic vet, I sort of could get pulled to any exotic practice around the country, which has been great. It's also kind of incorporated my love of travel with my profession. And I think it's kept me sane and balanced. And, all these life experiences have kept me pretty fulfilled, I would say.
We've been very busy.
Yeah, we've been busy.
We keep busy.
I noticed on some of the things on Facebook, I think I saw, you were doing things on Indian reservations and communities of poor people. Tell us a little bit about that.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have an organization here in Miami called Project PetSnip. And Project PetSnip is, we started this organization approximately 7 years ago, where we offer either free or low cost spaying and neutering to animals and low income neighborhoods. And through that, we have been reached out by other organizations like the Humane Society of the United States, where we partner with these organizations and they take it to places in the United States that also have a very high, like high volume of animals that need to be sterilized. So they bring us as a team to spay and neuter these animals. And we have gone to places in New Mexico, to Indian Reservation. What was
Yeah, we've been to the Laguna, Pueblo in New Mexico, and that was with the AVMA actually. The AVMA brought us out there. We have partnered with the Humane Society of the United States, and we've been with them in Montana on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. And then for the last few years, we started going to very remote communities in Alaska. We've been like places that I'm sure most people have never heard of. going out by bush plane to native Alaskan communities that have never seen a veterinarian before ever. And they have, their communities have dogs primarily. There's not a whole lot of cats out there, but they have dogs, and they have, overpopulation problems with the dogs because there's no birth control, there's no sterilization of those animals. So we go out there with a team with all the equipment, and we take boats and planes and all kinds of methods of transportation to get to remote islands and places that you can't even reach by car. And we set up sort of like a MASH type surgery clinic in the field, and we can generally handle about like 30 surgeries per day on average. We sterilize 30 dogs, or sometimes even more per day. And that can really make a dent in some of these small communities that don't have any veterinary access.
Yeah, we provide, so we do the spay and neutering, the vaccines, wellness care, physicals. If there's something that we can treat on site, we will try to treat it, like if somebody has a wound. And the last place that we went to, we actually set up the clinic at the jail. So the jail cells were actually the recovery stations for the animals. So we have to improvise, and it's just nice to be able to provide this to communities and be able to offer our skills. Like we are big believers of high quality. So we're able to give them high quality medicine and also be able to do high volume. So yeah, like Marc said, we will do anywhere between 30, 40 animals. And we've done more than that, but those days can be challenging. So
and many of those projects are sponsored by different grants, and they could be private grants or government grants. And so those services are provided for free to those communities, which is great because they, would never be able to afford, spending, $300-400 for a spay or neuter. It just wouldn't be feasible. So, through various charitable organizations, they make it possible. It's good work. It's really satisfying, and I feel like we're really helping these communities.
What other bird organizations are you working with besides? I know you're working with the Florida Audubon, maybe the Everglades Audubon. How's that?
Yeah, we do some work with our local Audubon. We've been involved with leading some trips. We've kind of partnered a little bit with the American Birding Association. We've done some things with them. With the American Birding Association, we've done several podcasts with them, and I was actually supposed to this summer be one of their guides they have summer camps for kids where we teach them. They spend a week or 2 weeks with us, and we take them birding and do activities with them, and I was supposed to be in Delaware doing that. So we're involved with the American Birding Association. And last year I worked, I took another break from veterinary medicine to kind of pursue another dream career that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to work as a bird guide in the field and, actually take people out birding. So I linked up with a company called St. Paul Island Tours, which is, it's based in Alaska in the Pribilof Islands on St. Paul Island. And I spent 3 months on St. Paul Island leading bird watchers around, taking them to see puffins and auklets and all kinds of rarities from Asia. So that was a great experience. I was actually supposed to be there again right now. I was supposed to spend another 2 months on St. Paul Island this summer, but unfortunately it couldn't happen due to coronavirus. And Eliana last summer and this year partnered up with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do waterfowl research out in Alaska.
Yeah, I was supposed to be there. Last year I spent with them 2 weeks where we went very remote. So it was a charter plane that would drop 2 of us in the middle of nowhere in the YK Delta, which is the northwest of Alaska. And they will drop us off with all our gear. And for 2 weeks, we will hike anywhere between 10 to 15 miles a day, trying to do what's called nest plotting. So trying to see who was breeding there, what species, how many eggs, what was the status, and just trying to keep data on where are the numbers declining of certain waterfowl species, or are the numbers going up? Because we've been seeing a lot of decline. So they're really monitoring what's going on in the area since it's such an important habitat for waterfowl. And then in the fall, I worked with Fish and Game in Alaska and the SeaLife Center, and we were working on endangered Stellar's eiders, which is a waterfowl as well, and trying to see also why their numbers are declining. And yeah, this year I was supposed to spend 2 months with Fish and Wildlife in Barrow, Alaska, and yeah, trying to also work on nest flooding and seeing how the numbers were. And we're going to do blood draws, we're going to do banding, we're going to actually do a lot more than we did last year, but sadly it had to get postponed until next year.
You guys have been doing population studies on ducks. I'm sure those same challenges are occurring in all kinds of birds. I'd love to hear the story about the endangered bird you found in Alaska. But at any rate, what's happening to bird populations?
Bird populations are, for the most part, in a big state of decline. And it's not so easy to put your finger on any one particular cause. There are so many things working against the birds right now. We've got climate change, which is kind of causing a big issue, especially when we're talking about Alaska and warming of the Bering Sea and, melting of polar ice is causing a big change in populations over there. We've got, of course, habitat destruction due to, development. The human population is growing and we're, turning forests and grasslands into condos and agricultural fields. And that's, taking away habitat for birds. We've got massive amounts of feral cats on the loose that kill, 1 billion birds a year potentially or more. We've got lots of birds that fall or die due to window strikes, crashing into windows and dying from head trauma. We've got major problems with pesticides. Pesticides have taken a huge toll on insect populations, which many birds rely on for food. So, you take out the insects, you take out their food source. Of course, the birds that rely on insects are going to take a big hit in their populations. So there are so many things working against the birds right now that, we really need to find areas where we can all play a part and, make a difference and try to bring these birds back. I think Cornell just published a study not too long ago, last year, that over the last 50 years, we've actually lost in the United States 30% of our entire bird population. And that's over, I think they said it's like over 3 billion birds. And, that's concerning. We've lost 1/3 of all birds in the United States in just 50 years. That's a bad sign. Birds are kind of like, I guess you could use that old adage, canary in a coal mine, or they're like an ecological litmus paper. They're indicator species that something, if their populations are going down, something is not quite right in our environment. And I think we really need to focus on that a little bit more and, see what's happening all around us and take measures to reverse it.
Yeah.
I can see that the COVID-19 was actually a blessing for conservationists. It actually showed the world that we can do 6 weeks without going to the mall every 2 minutes and having Amazon deliver stuff every 5 minutes. So there is some education, I think, for the world that we can do this. We just have to be committed to it. What can the public do to support these types of projects that actually make a difference in the world?
I love that question. And whoever is listening to us right now, I think you should get pen and paper and take some notes, because there are so many things that we all can do from home. And this, I get really touched by this because it means so much to me, because we have worked so hard to try to create a nice habitat in our own yard here at home for the birds. And COVID has really affected everyone. But one thing that COVID brought, like you were mentioning before, is that, we've been home and we have enjoyed the yard more, and we realize that nature has helped us deal with the difficult situation that everyone is dealing with at the moment. And if everyone took a little bit of time in their yard to create a habitat for the birds and wildlife, it will make a huge difference for our own health and also for the animals. And we have done quite a bit of things here, and I will mention a little bit of each thing, and you can start with one thing at a time. because I know it can feel overwhelming trying to do everything at once. But little by little, you can create a really nice oasis and help the birds, help wildlife, and help yourself have a nice habitat. We have, I keep looking outside because I'm trying to see, we have approximately 19 bird feeders. I was actually counting this morning, and we have, 19 bird feeders. And all people have to do is start with one bird feeder. That's how we started several years ago. We got one bird feeder, we put some seed in it, and we started seeing the birds. And if you start falling in love with one bird, most likely you will fall in love with another bird, and you will want to protect the next species, and so forth and so on. So start with a bird feeder, get wild wings bird seeds, because that for us has been a godsend in so many ways. Number one, we love the fact that it's organic. Oh, if I want to eat organic, why am I going to feed the birds things that have pesticides? So that has been amazing. So get a bird feeder, get wild wings bird seed that it's organic and you're not bringing pesticides to the birds. Provide them with water, like a water dish. So if you can't afford to go buy a bird fountain, get a water dish, and make sure you're cleaning it regularly, and provide them with water. I mean, just like we need to drink water on a daily basis, so do the birds. And it's been very, very hot. At least here in Miami, this week we broke records on the hottest week that we've ever have had in history. So providing the birds with, water resources, and not just the birds, but I'm referring to all wildlife. It's very, very important. And window stripes. All our windows in the entire house have these little dots. And I will send you, give you the information on this. And they're from a company called Feather Friendly that also we absolutely love, because they created a product that really works, that lasts a long time, and that anybody can put in their houses. The way it works is that you install these little dots. I think they're like an inch apart, approximately.
Maybe 2 inches.
2 inches apart. And from the inside, when you're looking out, they really don't obstruct the view. But the birds, when they're looking outside towards the inside of the house, they actually see the dots and they don't try to fly through the glass. And that's when we have all the window strikes and the millions of birds that die each year because of this. So we talked about the bird seed, water fountain, a bird feeder, the window strikes, and planting natives.
I think even more simpler than planting natives is talking about the concept of having a lawn, a grass lawn. Lawns are very poor in wildlife value. They're kind of like a biological desert. They don't offer any food or cover or really much of anything to wildlife. And grass or lawns in the United States, I think in terms of, we want to talk about crops that we plant. Lawns are taking up like 40% of, or consist of 40% of the crops that we grow in the United States. There are so many other things you could potentially do with your own backyard that would help birds, help butterflies, help wildlife. And it may just involve taking a small piece of your lawn and converting it to something that has a more valuable plant species on it. It could be, a native plant that's native to your area, or a plant that provides food or cover, or maybe provides a nesting cavity. Some birds like to nest in cavities in trees. So converting part of your lawn to, more of a wildlife-friendly habitat, I think is something that if everybody did that, we could make a huge impact on improving bird populations. It's just such an easy thing that everybody can participate in.
Yeah, we moved to this house 5 years ago, and when we moved here, we were just renting, and then we bought the house approximately 3 years ago. And we have been documenting the species of birds that we have had in our yard since, and we have had 97 species of birds in this small yard. And our yard is not that big. We live in a suburban area with a regular sized yard, and 97 species of birds have stopped here to use this yard for one reason or the other. So it's incredible what you could have show up in your yard. And now lately we started a list of all the butterflies and moths that we're getting. And the other day, and one day I'm like, Mark, we have 12 species of butterflies just right now, come see. And we couldn't believe that 12 different species of butterflies we were seeing at once flying in our yard. Because like slowly, you know, we added one butterfly plant, and now we added another one and another one. And now we just have created such a beautiful background where like we have all these animals using the yard for their home. And it's just so nice to be able to share and we can all like coexist. I love to say that word because we can all coexist with animals. Snakes, I love snakes. I think we can respect them. They also deserve to live. And anybody here that comes to the yard, as long as you're native, you're welcomed.
Another quick thing I'll just throw out there. Another very easy thing that anybody can do that would also make a big difference for birds is keeping cats indoors. Individual cats kill anywhere from about 20 to 40 birds per year. That's per cat. So, you know, super simple thing that everybody can do. If you have a pet cat, we have 2 cats. We love our cats dearly, but they're strictly indoor pets. Letting cats outdoors is a serious hazard for birds and other wildlife too. Cats also kill, you know, various mammals and lizards and pretty much whatever they can get their hands on. That's just their natural instinct. So keeping cats indoors can make a big difference in boosting bird populations.
Yeah.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about, Marc and Eliana, was the role of pesticides in this decimation of birds. There's some recent new information. The scientists working on it are from MIT, so I don't think they're to be snuffed at. And they're showing that glyphosate is the #1 immunosuppressive chemical in the world. And that's leading to fungus infections in bats and frogs and bananas and almonds and all kinds of stuff. And they think with this COVID-19, when you destroy the natural habitat of these animals, viruses come out, the animals' immune systems are down, and now you get a pandemic. That's pretty new stuff, but we've known for decades that DDT and dieldrin and lindane and all those things, and getting rid of those things. When we first had our farm, we had our soil tested and we didn't find any chemicals, but when we sent our product to Germany, Helga Gerlich had it tested and it had lindane in it. There hadn't been lindane used in the United States for 30 years. She said, well, most products coming out of the United States have DDT and lindane in micro levels, everything, organic, non-organic, whatever, because it's everywhere. And that's what we're looking at with this glyphosate now. What's your take on all this nonsense? Or not nonsense, but.
Sure. Well, yeah, we know that pesticides are, you know, a problem on a global scale, but even here in our own little yard, we've seen some of the negative effects of pesticides. We have honeybees in our yard, and probably about 3 times now in the last year, we've had major die-offs of our honeybees. All of a sudden, we see bees on the ground, unable to fly. They're showing neurologic symptoms, and then all of a sudden, the whole colony collapses. And you know, those bees, they're a food animal. They produce honey, and they have economic value. And you know, we sure don't like to see when we have die-offs, and we're pretty sure those die-offs have been related to mosquito spraying. You know, here in South Florida, mosquitoes can be a problem. Mosquitoes, of course, can you know, spread diseases, but you know, sort of indiscriminately spraying for mosquitoes by air or by truck or however it's done has effects on so many different types of insects, and many of those are beneficial insects. You know, all the pollinators that are you know, pollinating the native plants and even pollinating crops are going to be affected by this, you know, sort of mass pesticide spraying. And the other thing about our yard is we're big on butterfly gardening. We you know, we have all kinds of host plants that attract monarchs and giant swallowtails and pipevine swallowtails and zebra longwings. And just recently, we were actually captive rearing some malachite caterpillars, kind of a really rare butterfly here in South Florida, and there was a spraying for mosquitoes, and within a day we had all of our caterpillars start looking like limp noodles hanging from their host plants. And it was just so sad to see that we've created this oasis for wildlife, but it's being destroyed by pesticide spraying. And that's just here in our own little yard. So imagine what's happening on a global scale with the use of glyphosate and all the other pesticides that are being sprayed on crops to of course give us more food, but it's having such a devastating effect on all insects. And these insects are not just sort of there incidentally, they're part of a very complex web of life, and removing those insects will for sure eventually have its effects on our own species and our own food and kind of everything that we rely on as humans. So yeah, I think the use of pesticides needs to be scrutinized and greatly reduced, as it's having massive effects on insect populations and thereby sort of moving up the food chain, affecting birds and affecting mammals and affecting reptiles and eventually affecting us as humans. So we need to be very, very careful, and I really think we need to put a lot more emphasis on organic agriculture and really reducing the use of pesticides in our own backyards and in agriculture as well.
One thing that I was reading recently, I will have to search where the article came from, but I was reading that so when they're growing crops, they come in and put pesticides, then come the birds that eat those insects around those crops, and obviously the birds are also dying because of eating those insects that have the pesticides. And like everything is so linked and everything gets affected. And like here in our own yard, we are so strict with never using pesticides, making sure that everything is really well done, organic, as natural as possible. And then seeing these animals that we have attracted here die, it's sad, and seeing them disoriented and dying in our own hands, and there's nothing we can do to help them. So it's upsetting. It's very, very upsetting. So I definitely think that pesticides really need to be controlled better, that we need to reduce them, or if even better, eliminate them completely, because they're killing so many things that shouldn't even be killed.
Yeah, and I think the latest I've heard on colony collapse disorder with the honeybees is that, I mean, for a while, it seemed that nobody really knew what was causing it, but the more I read about it, pesticides seem to be coming to the forefront of that discussion, right? It seems like pesticide residues are probably what are responsible for harming these bees that we rely on the bees so much for pollinating our crops that, if we lose those bees, food is going to become more expensive and less available. So we really need to kind of piece all that together and reduce our use of pesticides and save the bees to save ourselves.
So I want to say thank you so much for having us, and for me, I think when I saw you back in December when you came to our presentation about birding by bus, and I told you something and you said, can I record that? I don't know if you remember that. And I was saying to you in person how much Wild Wings products meant to me, and because it's something that I feel like I can safely feel comfortable about feeding the birds and knowing that I'm not hurting them and that I'm doing something good for them. So I just want to say thank you for creating like that product, because it means so much to me, because I want to eat organic and I want to make sure that the birds also eat organic, because I want to be able to get out there in nature and enjoy the birds through my binoculars, and they brighten my day. They have, while being here stuck in Miami and with COVID during migration, it was so nice to every morning get out there and just in our own yard enjoy these birds that were coming to eat this food, and knowing that I was creating a safe habitat for them and that I was not hurting them. So I want to say really from the bottom of my heart, thank you for creating that product that just means so much, and that I hope that we keep telling people, go buy Wild Wings. And it just, because it's a good product. So thank you so much for doing that. And I feel like everybody needs to try to do a little bit to help the animals out there and try to make a difference, because we all can do a little bit. That will become a big impact.
That's one of the things thank you for that acknowledgement, Eliana, but we've also noted that with this COVID-19, people are buying more organic things now, at least in the organic industry is reporting that. We're seeing that with our bird foods. And that's something anybody can do. They can vote with their dollars by supporting organic, because the organic farming industry, Monsanto just filed a new lawsuit against being punished for selling glyphosate. They settled it for $10 billion or something like that, but they make $1 trillion in profits. So our organic farming industry is under a lot of pressure. They can produce as much food and cheaper than regular farming without all the decimation. So people can vote to save the environment by just doing simple things, by buying organic.
Yeah.
Thank you for supporting that effort.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the HBD Chat, a production of HBD International Inc., Harrison's Bird Foods, and Wild Wings Organic Wild Bird Foods. We're always looking for interesting guests and new topics to discuss. We'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts about this podcast. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel.